Hi, boys and girls. All right, so we're back for another day of talking about how to determine themes. Yesterday was a review of what theme actually is, and today we're going to talk about how to apply our knowledge of determining themes, but to historical fiction books. Okay, so today's focus. So what I want to teach you is that once you've paused to develop an interpretation in a book, you almost wear that idea or that interpretation like a pair of glasses that you use as a lens. So you now look through the story through the lens of the interpretation that you already developed. So you can read the rest of the story through that lens, saying to yourself, great, this goes with my original interpretation. Or you might say to yourself, oh, actually, instead of my original interpretation, this new part is making me think something new. But you're always reading the story through the lens of the interpretation you already made. Okay, so we're going to do some of that work together. Before we start doing that work, I want to give you some examples of past literary interpretations that I've had from students. So in years past, I've had different book clubs reading. One book club was reading a book titled Dandelions, which is a book about a pioneer family moving westward during westward expansion. And one day while we were doing this type of lesson, an interpretation that one of the students came up with, Samuel, he said, oh, the lesson in this story is that family is important during times of struggle. Wow, okay, so that became the lens through which Samuel and his book club mates started reading the rest of their story. Another student of mine, Maria, her book club was reading a book titled Letters from Rivka, which was a book about a Jewish family emigrating from Russia to Belgium in 1919. And while we were doing a very similar lesson to this, an interpretation that they grew was, I think the author is trying to teach me that friends are always there to help each other because that's what friends are for. So, and that became their lens, their pair of glasses that they went on to read the rest of the story through, deciding, oh, this new piece of information or this new event goes with my original interpretation, or actually this is making me think something else. Okay? Now, you don't need to know these two books. You don't need to have read these two books. I'm just giving you these examples of interpretations that other students have grown about other historical fiction books and how those interpretations become the lens through which they're reading the rest of the book. And actually, these interpretations become the theme that they most likely determine, okay? Something else I want you to remember is we talked yesterday about an idea being a seed and then it growing into a sunflower. I want you to remember that analogy because it's going to come up again in a few minutes. So why don't we go ahead and do some of this work together with Number the Stars, okay? Excellent book that we've all been reading, a gem in the world of historical fiction. And I've told you in the past that I read this book when I was your age as well. I've never forgotten it. So why don't we try determining the theme of this book based on what we have read so far? And I want you to think back to that riveting scene when the soldiers came to the Johansson home in the middle of the night. It was so intense. I know me and my class were like on the edge of our seats while we were reading it. And the soldiers came to the door, they were banging. Anne-Marie and Ellen were in bed. They really didn't think the soldiers would come, but then Anne-Marie realized that they had shown up. They were looking for the Rosens. We were nervous, we were scared, we didn't know what was gonna happen. We didn't know how the Johanssons even planned to hide Ellen yet. We really didn't understand what Mr. Johansson had thought through. And we really just didn't know what was gonna happen. And I think that we watched these two girls go through a very deeply emotional time, okay? In just a few minutes, their lives really changed in a very deep way. And I remember when I first read it, I said to myself, wow, if I was either Anne-Marie or Johansson and I was so scared and I had to act so quickly and I had to change my thinking so fast, I would have grown up faster than I could have ever imagined. Remember, you have to remember that these are two very young girls. They're probably about your age, and they're in a very emotionally taxing situation, okay? So we're remembering that scene, we're remembering what was happening, we remember what the girls were going through, we're remembering the actions that they took. Now I want us to remember that yesterday we talked about some questions that we can ask ourselves when we're trying to determine the theme of a story. And the first of those questions was, what message am I taking away from this story and why? Because remember, a theme is a message, a moral, or a lesson. And authors, by nature, their job is to teach readers lessons. And we need to ask ourselves, what message am I taking away from Number the Stars? Especially after that really intense scene where the soldiers showed up at the Johansons. So, an interpretation we can grow based on that scene is, this story is teaching us that war makes children grow up early. These girls, in just a matter of minutes, became young adults. They encountered a situation that they never expected. They had to say and do things that they never thought they would have to do. So I would say that after that scene, an interpretation that one might grow, a seed, is that this story is teaching us that war makes children grow up really early, right? So as we take that seed and grow it into an idea, the possible theme that we've determined is that war makes children grow up early. Okay, now we're going to take that interpretation that war makes children grow up early, and we're going to make it that pair of glasses or that lens that we're going to read the rest of the story through. Okay, so as we think about the story, we want to think about other meanings behind war makes children grow up early. What have we seen in the story so far, or what can we say to prove or support the claim that we've made, which is that war makes children grow up early? Well, war makes children grow up early because they have to act in grown-up and brave ways, right? Anne-Marie and Ellen had to act in unexpectedly brave and grown-up ways in that moment, and they had no choice, and they had to do it really, really fast. War makes children grow up quickly because they have to make life and death decisions. Anne-Marie knew that if she didn't pull off Ellen's necklace, that most likely Ellen would be in grave danger if they realized who she really was. And she made that determination based on the fact that they showed up in the middle of the night, how worried her parents were, and the fact that the Rosens had to flee town in the first place and leave Ellen to be hidden with the Johansons. So she did make a life and death decision. War makes children grow up fast because they're forced to give up childhood things, for example, cupcakes and toys. And we've learned through the first 5 or 6 chapters of the book that life has changed drastically in the past year or two for the Johansen and Rosen children and all the children in Denmark, right? They haven't had cupcakes or toys or anything like that in over a year. So life has been unexpectedly difficult for them. And they've had to lose the things that we associate with being a child, like cupcakes and toys. Notice I added the word because to each one. I started with my initial interpretation that war makes children grow up quickly. I added the word because, and then I added on to my initial interpretation. That is me going from a seed to a sunflower. So imagine the word because as being the stem of a big, beautiful sunflower, going from the seed up until that beautiful flower. That's how we grow really strong literary interpretations, okay? You need to take one seed idea and then you need to grow it into something bigger, because when you do that, you immerse yourself more deeply in the story. And if you immerse yourself more deeply in the story, you understand the story better. So after you've paused to grow those big ideas like we did in the beginning of the lesson, which was we made the interpretation that war makes children grow up faster. When you read on, when you read beyond the point in your book where you made that interpretation, your job is going to be to examine new ideas through the lens of the original interpretation. So you take that interpretation, which for us was war makes children grow up quickly, and you start looking at the rest of the story through that lens. And you ask yourself, Do these new events, do these new ideas go with my original interpretation, or are they making me change my interpretation? Are they making me think something new? You want to revise your ideas and add the word because that develops your idea further. That is what really grows strong literary interpretations. It's also important to realize that your interpretations are always evolving. They're always growing. They're always changing. They're always getting stronger. They're always being tweaked a little bit. And that's a good thing because that shows that you're really getting into the story and you're really considering every little part of a story. Because remember, an author does everything. Every move an author makes is for a reason. So every word that comes across the page, every action that takes place during a scene, everything that happens has some meaning behind it. And it's your job as the reader to figure out what those meanings are. And once you figure out new meanings, of course your interpretations are going to evolve because you're getting to know the story better. Okay, so your assignment today is, first I want you to spend 20 minutes reading your historical fiction book. After that, I want you to consider possible themes. Remember, themes are messages, morals, or lessons in a story. So I want you to consider possible themes of your historical fiction book. And I want you to choose one big idea to write about, one theme that you have determined, and that's what you're going to write about today. You're going to go back to your e-reader's notebook. You're going to visit slides 21 and 22, 21 for a recap of today's lesson and your assignment. And then 22 is where you're going to do your long and strong writing about the theme that you chose. Very important. Your theme, if you are telling me that the theme of your book is blank, then that is your claim. And whenever you come up with a claim, you have to use evidence to support it. So you need to use evidence from the story, as much of it as you have read so far, to support the claim. If you're saying the theme of my book is war makes children grow up quickly, you need to go back in your story and you need to provide evidence supporting and showing how the theme that war makes children grow up quickly is true. So you're going to do this work in your story today, and you're going to do your long and strong writing in your reader's notebook. Good luck.